Hey guys.
Hi.
Good morning, Mr. Wood.
Good morning, Brian. Rachel, how are you?
Well,
Good. Leslie?
I'm hungry.
Okay, well, lunch is right after this period, so
Okay.
you're just gonna have to, I don't know, swallow your spit or something, I don't know.
No.
Yeah,
Ew.
okay. All right, today we are going to talk a little bit about the Civil War. We are going to connect how events that happened a long time ago can affect things that happen far in the future in very major ways. First thing we're going to do is I've got a little clip from a movie called Cold Mountain. I will show it to you guys so if everybody could look up at the screen, please, and if we could pay attention and stay quiet while we watch so everybody can hear. And rolling.
We got our war! We got it! We got it! It's about time! Emma! Ready to fight, son! Ready to fight! Woo! We got a war, man!
Wow, you have your wall.
Ada. Great day for North Carolina. Those who follow Lincoln or preach Appalachia, you best keep one eye open when you're sleeping. No boogeyman might get you.
You the law all of a sudden, Mr. Teague?
That's right, son. I'm going for Haywood County. I'm the law from today. You all go fight now. We watch over your sweethearts.
Hey, Teague, why ain't you fighting? Because he's too old. You might be safer back in Charleston.
But then he'll be waiting for you.
3 cheers for North Carolina! Right. 3 cheers for the South! Hip, hip, hurrah! Hip, hip, hurrah! Hip, hip,
Hip hip.
Hurrah.
Very enthusiastic. Okay, so we have a little bit of bell work this morning. I see some of you have your notebooks out. If everybody could take their notebooks out. Get your pencils. We're just going to be writing a couple sentences, I think. I'll give you a few minutes, 5 minutes to work on this, and I want you to listen to the prompt. And I would have it written on the board, but we lost our board. It's no longer with us, and so I will just explain it to you. So if you listen carefully. Okay. So I want you all to imagine that you are a resident of North Carolina in the summer of 1861. There's been a lot of talk about the abolition of slavery. You do not personally own slaves. You've never really interacted with any slave necessarily, but you have witnessed their suffering in the fields and on the plantations that surround your town. You've seen in the market in your town, you've seen mothers separated from their children. You've seen men and women scarred from whipping jump up and down while their prices are negotiated. So North Carolina at this time is no longer an American state, but it is a Confederate state, and I'll explain to you guys later what that is, but it is no longer part of America. It is politicians, they want to continue slavery. They want to continue all the suffering that you see around you. They don't really care to end the suffering or the inhumanity that you witness on a daily basis. It kind of makes you sick, I think. And you see friends and family members pledging themselves to North Carolina, joining its new army to fight an inevitable war against a stronger force that is fighting to end slavery and preserve America. So North Carolina is building an army to fight America solely on the basis of slavery. You were American not 2 months prior. I want you all to write 4 to 5 sentences. I'll give you about 5 to 7 minutes to do this. Do you leave North Carolina and take a stand against slavery, but also your friends and family? Or do you stay loyal to your friends and your family while also risking your life against impossible odds to fight for an unjust cause that you don't believe in? So let me say the prompt one more time. Do you leave North Carolina to take a stand against slavery, or do you stay in North Carolina to fight against slavery? To fight for slavery, excuse me, which is a cause that you don't believe in. So we can write for 5 minutes. And the timer has started, as you guys can see up on the screen now. I'll set it for 6 minutes while I prepare. So. Okay. Very nice. You guys are doing very nicely right now. That's exactly what I want to hear. Still have 5 more minutes. Lucky you, I gave you an extra minute. You finish early, you can put down your pencils. Don't feel like you need to use the full 5 minutes if your thoughts come to you quickly. You already finished, Rachel? You must have been prepared. You must have seen me writing the prompt early on, maybe. I'm gonna act like I didn't hear that. May I look at it? Very good. What did you think of the clip?
I love the clip.
Ask your parents if you can watch the film. I wouldn't say it's
I'm gonna read
appropriate.
mine too, Mr. Wood.
Are you finished?
I am. It's the bottom one.
What a novelist over here. You're very noble. It's admirable. Are you finished, Leslie? Can we please get a lid for our mason jar? I'll let it slide this time. Remember, guys, we need to have lids on all drinks we have in class. I don't want to stain carpet. All right, so we're going to stop a little bit early. It seems like everybody's done. Everybody came prepared. I also, if you look on your desk, we do have some activities that we'll do later on, so you guys can just ignore those for a little while. So if you guys want to discuss this later on, we'll do that. I think for right now, I would like one volunteer to share what they wrote for their bell work this morning. If nobody raises their hands, I will call on somebody at random. Leslie.
Just read what I wrote.
You can read what you wrote. I prefer it if you kind of gave us a little bit of an explanation, but if you wanted to read what you wrote, that is fine with me.
I'd rather do that. And then I might be able to explain better.
That's fine.
1 year ago, this would have been so easy. Of course, I would stay and fight with my friends and family. I couldn't imagine doing anything else, but today I just don't know. I have watched my friends' slaves all my life. It was just like they were a part of the landscape. But I've been listening to my mom and dad talk lately. It doesn't seem so simple anymore. All people have value, don't they? People shouldn't own people. I think I would have to leave. I don't think I could stay and fight, even if it means losing my friends. I don't think I could live with myself.
Very beautifully written. Well put. So you made the noble decision to leave your friends and family, to fight against your friends and family, even if it meant your own brothers and sisters, even if it meant destroying everything you've known to this point in your life. You would leave because you believed that slavery should be ended, right?
I don't think it would be easy, but I don't think that living with myself the rest of my life, fighting for something that's so horrible to other people, sometimes I think you just have to be true to yourself and to what you believe in, and maybe it'll change for everyone else later on.
Those are some very strong beliefs. Thank you for sharing, Leslie. Okay, let's move on. I want everybody to think about the prompt because it's an important question. Sometimes we all have to make sacrifices, and those sacrifices aren't always easy to make. So it's an important lesson. I think it's a lesson that a lot of people learned in the Civil War. I think it definitely divided the nation in more ways than one, as we'll see, on a personal level and a national level. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to stop rambling. Today we're going to create a little bit of a timeline of history. We're going to see how an invention that was patented in 1794 started a war 67 years later. So we had something that was invented for one purpose at one period of time that didn't really have anything to do with war, but had something to do with cotton, the crop, eventually led in a very, not so direct way to the death and suffering of thousands and thousands of people, but also the ending of slavery. And we can kind of connect how one thing can lead to another, can lead to another, can lead to another. And that's history. That's what we're doing here today. So we mentioned the cotton gin briefly yesterday. Does anybody remember what the cotton gin was? Can we see a show of hands? Who remembers what the cotton gin was? Rachel?
The cotton gin is a machine that separates cotton from the stem.
Yep, from its seed. Prior to the cotton gin, people on cotton plantations, planters is what they were called, they would have slaves separate cotton from its seed by hand, which is very laborious. It's not easy. I wish I had an example to show you. There's not an abundance of cotton here in Colorado necessarily, but if I could show you, you would understand how difficult it is to separate cotton from a seed, especially at a fast pace. And we're talking about a very largely produced crop like cotton. It needs to be very quickly processed so it can be sold to make money. And that's what the cotton gin did. It allowed the cotton to be processed very quickly. So then there were large abundance of just the fluffy parts of cotton without the seed that could be made into all sorts of things in the 1800s. Can anybody tell me what something that may have been made from cotton in the 1800s? Well, let's look around the room right now. Does anybody see anything that's made of cotton in the room right now?
My shirt.
Rachel's shirt is made of cotton. My shirt's made of cotton. I'm not sure what Brian's shirt is made of. Looks like some sort of straw-like material.
Polyester.
Polyester, that's not cotton. So yeah, we still use cotton today. In the 1800s, most cotton was used for fabrics, so clothing, tablecloths, sails of boats, which were important because most boats back then ran on either wind power or steam. There were a few boats that were beginning to run on steam, which also actually contributed to the sale of cotton, but that's not relevant to this conversation. So the cotton gin allowed for the South to produce a lot of fluffy cotton to be made in all sorts of different things by different people, and cotton was valuable. It could be sold, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So Britain, France, New England, America, people wanted cotton. They used it for all sorts of things. They, like I said, they would make fancy shirts and tablecloths. It was used for insulation as well. But this directly affected the slave trade. So you would think that if no longer slaves were needed to separate cotton from its seed, there'd be less of a demand for slaves, but that wasn't the case. And that's because when the cotton gin was invented, more cotton could be produced. So that means more people wanted cotton to make their shirts. So what happened was that instead of slaves being used to separate cotton from its seeds, which was a slow process, they were needed to be used for something else entirely. I can't say this word entirely.
Yes.
Entirely. Thank you. And can anybody tell me what slaves may have been used for? And if they weren't separating cotton from its seed, but a lot of cotton needed to be processed, what were slaves doing mostly?
Planting and picking the cotton.
Planting and picking the cotton. They'd be growing the cotton, they'd be picking the cotton because Britain, France, New England, everybody saw how quickly cotton could be produced. They were buying the cotton. Southern states were making a lot of money, and the more money, the more cotton that was being produced, the more that they would want to buy, and the more that would needed to be grown. So slaves were mostly used to grow and pick cotton. We needed a lot of them, or the South, I should say, needed a lot of them. I'm not Southern. But the South needed a lot of slaves. They needed a lot of cotton. The South actually grew 75%, which is 3/4 of the world's cotton, and exported most of it to England and New England. So they were very rich, and they relied on cotton to maintain their way of life. It was their biggest export. In fact, it was America's biggest export in the 1850s and 60s. We produced more cotton than anything else that we sold to other countries, and it was mostly in the South, actually. The North was a lot of industry, a lot of factories, but none of them were growing and selling cotton. So Southern politicians, they believed that Southern politician and much of the Southern population generally believed that slavery was necessary to its way of life. I don't know if that was true. Do you guys think that was true? Did the South need slaves? Is there something that the South could do to end its reliance on slavery? So I know Brian knows the answer. Do I have anybody else? So let me rephrase the question. So the South believed it needed slaves to pick and grow cotton. But we all know from our bell work this morning that slavery is not right, it's wrong. It's a messed up thing. People shouldn't own other people, as Leslie pointed out. So what's something that the Southern plantation owners could have done to end slaves while also being able to produce the cotton they needed to sell and maintain their way of life. Leslie.
They could have freed their slaves and then paid them like employees.
I like that idea. Do we have any other ideas? Rachel?
I agree with Leslie.
Brian?
She stole my answer.
That's true. I think that's a pretty good solution. They could have paid their slaves, but they didn't want to do this. And there's different reasons. There's personal reasons that they didn't want to free their slaves. Does anybody here? I'll just explain. They didn't want to do this mostly because of prejudice. Just generally, I think a lot of the arguments that the Southerners made in 1860s were that white people were superior to colored people, black people in the time. So they believed that the slaves' a black person's natural born purpose was to serve the white man, was to be a slave. And this was written about and pretty well documented that this was the prevailing mindset. So just racism. And then there was also, say, Leslie's solution was, I guess, carried out. They would have to pay their slaves, which business owners, plantation owners, they didn't want to do because paying costs money. An employee is a lot different than somebody that you can just pay to work for free or have to work for you for free. Yes, Brian.
Not only that, if they released all their slaves, then that's money that they paid for those slaves. So it's like giving away all of your machinery in this day and age. So they would lose money on that end, and they'd probably have to pay the slaves something when they left, so they just wouldn't be with nothing.
Yep.
And then that was free labor for them. All they had to do is feed them and put them in a tin shed somewhere, if that. It would be much more expensive for them.
It would be a lot more expensive. So the cost of paying their slaves, the cost of freeing their slaves, giving rights to former slaves, allowing them to vote, that's very threatening because then in the Southerners' mind, a former slave who was able to vote could further take away the power of, I guess, the white person at the time. They were very afraid of that. It was very much a culture driven by fear, I believe, and I think a lot of people would agree. So there was something that directly threatened slavery, and that was a presidential election in 1860. And I wish I had $5, but I don't. But if we all, can somebody tell me what president is on the $5 bill? Does anybody know?
Is it? Oh,
Go
hands
ahead.
raised.
Go ahead.
Is it Abraham
Abraham
Lincoln?
Yes. And there's a reason he's on the $5 bill. He's also on the penny. He's an important person. If anybody ever sees a $5 bill, please let me know.
That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. I don't think I've ever seen that much money in my entire life. Anyway, so yep, Abraham Lincoln. He was elected to president in 1860. He was a Republican. I think a lot of us have heard of the good old Republican Party. And except for in 1860, the Republican Party was brand new and it was founded as an abolitionist party. Does anybody know what abolitionism is, or abolition? Abolish, to end. Abolition means, in this context, in the 1860s, if you were to speak of abolition, you would be speaking of the ending of slavery. So it was, abolitionists were a group of people who wanted to end slavery. They thought that it was inhumane. They saw that it was inhumane. They saw the suffering. I think they had the same instinct that all of you have here today, but except for back then it was relevant. Now it's like we all know that slavery was wrong and we're happy that it's ended. But back then, I don't think everybody was convinced, but there was a group of people who were convinced that slavery was wrong. And those were the abolitionists, and they were driven to end slavery.
Could you be an abolitionist to end something else besides slavery?
Could you rephrase your question?
Could you be an abolitionist to end something other than slavery, like to abolish
Oh, sure, yeah.
some other
Yeah, I mean,
Oreos? Want to
if you hated Oreos
Oreo.
enough,
Oreo abolitionist?
I think that there would probably be certain types of abolitionists today, maybe. You could say that a vegetarian is, or a vegan is wanting to abolish the meat industry, essentially, outlaw processing meat, eating meat. That's a good question. But we don't normally refer to vegans as abolitionists, but who knows, maybe we should. Let's move on. So the South felt threatened by Abraham Lincoln's election. He wanted to end slavery. They thought he'd abolish slavery. They thought they would have to pay for their slaves or set them free, which would ruin their economy and their way of life. They wouldn't be able to be the booming rich cotton producers of the world like they thought they once were, which they were. So southern states began seceding from the Union, seceding meaning they were leaving the Union. They didn't want to be the Union being the United States. They were states that were part of the United States of America, just like Colorado is today, or Texas is today, or South Carolina is today, but they decided they no longer wanted to be part of America, so they declared that they would leave. And it started actually with South Carolina in 1860, a month after Lincoln won the president election. And then 11 states would follow them and declare themselves the Confederate States of America, otherwise known as the Confederacy. So the Confederacy were 11 total states that had left the Union. You guys can write this down because it will be on the test later. They left the Union. I love how diligent you guys are at taking notes. It's awesome. I don't always. It just warms my heart. But anyway, so the 11 states that left. So they left, they created the Confederacy. They considered themselves a country. Lincoln and the North, on the other hand, did not consider them a country. They considered them still part of the United States. And we'll get into that. But the 11 states were South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, Florida, Alabama, and Arkansas. And it is up here on the board. Anybody who wants to write that down.
So Texas was not?
No, I let me reread. I may have skipped Texas. So South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Texas, Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, Florida, Alabama, Arkansas. I may have accidentally said Kentucky instead of Texas. Kentucky was not a Confederate state. It was a border state. I apologize. So if you wrote Kentucky on your paper, you can cross that off. I messed up. Sorry. It's okay. So in Lincoln's inaugural address, an inaugural address is when a new president is elected, they need to speak to the country and they need to tell them what they want to do. And in Lincoln's inaugural address, he didn't speak to the whole country, but he spoke directly to the South. And he promised that it was his priority to preserve the United States. He was speaking to the South, telling them that he didn't recognize the fact that they had seceded or declared themselves seceded, or he didn't see them as leaving the Union. He saw them merely as, I guess, uncooperative, we'll say. But it was his primary goal to keep the United States the way that it is, with all those 11 states still included in the American way of life, on American maps, under his control, essentially, because he was the president of the United States. And he wanted to be able to govern the 11 states that left, which is important because he, I believe, had other intentions. But he also said during his inaugural address that he had no intent to interfere with the institutions of slavery. Can anybody tell me what that means? No intent to interfere with the institutions of slavery. He did not want to interfere with slavery. So what was Lincoln saying? Leslie?
He was saying that he wouldn't try and get rid of slavery.
He wouldn't try to get rid of slavery. That's interesting because 2 years later he freed the slaves, and 2 years after that he made slavery illegal in the United States. So can anybody tell me why you think he said that during his inaugural address? It's pretty complicated. Why would, even though he did free the slaves, and it seemed like he wanted to free the slaves, he was an abolitionist after all, part of the Republican Party. Why would he say in his inaugural address that he didn't want to free the slaves? It's maybe a question for next time. Brian, do you have an answer?
Because he didn't want to upset the South
He didn't want to make them mad.
and he didn't want the finger pointed at him for starting the war. So
And which war are we talking about?
the Civil War.
The Civil War. You know your stuff. I like it. A month after Lincoln's inaugural address, the Confederacy bombed the United States at Fort Sumter, Sumter, and the Civil War officially began. And that's where we'll end today. For the lesson, we do have some vocabulary words that I want to go over. We have abolitionism, so if you guys can write all these down. We have abolitionism, you can add them to our vocab list that we already started yesterday. Abolitionism is the first one, and it is, I'll put these up on the board as well. It was a movement to end slavery in the United States of America. The inaugural address, which is the speech given by the President of the United States on his first day of his first term. And this speech informs the country of the president's intentions as a leader, and then the Confederacy, which is the country formed by the 11 states that seceded from the Union. So if you guys look on your table, we can look at our activity now. You should have a map and then a worksheet that coincides with the map. And just for practice, I do want you to look up on the board at the map that shows the Confederate States of America. And just like if you see the red states on the map on the board, I want you to, on your own maps, outline or color in the states that the Confederacy consisted of. So I'm going to say them one more time. South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Texas, Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, Florida, Alabama, and Arkansas. And you guys will be given a few minutes to do this. 4 minutes. Doesn't need to be perfect. It's just practice. This won't be graded. But I do want to see everybody complete it. We can't go to lunch until I see everybody's Confederacies colored in. And if you find that you have extra time, like a little bit of extra credit, you can label the states as well. And then Rachel's map is looking pretty complete. Leslie's map is looking very thoughtfully done. Good job.
I wish I had my color pencils.
I'm gonna borrow my crayons.
Pencil is fine. Again, we're not turning these in. If you guys would like an extra copy to color in yourself at home, I have a few extra copies if you'd like. And then on your worksheet, you guys don't need to finish this in class, but I will tomorrow be collecting this. I would like you to just write in the names of the 11 states that the Confederacy consisted of. And the names are on the board, and they should also be on your papers. So, before we go to lunch, one more thing. So this unit, we do have a unit project, and there'll be individual projects instead of group projects this time, but you will be presenting them to your classmates at the end of the semester. To express yourselves a little bit, and I'll give you guys 4 options for a unit project. You can either write a 2-page letter to your family in 1861, just like you did for bell work. I want you to imagine yourself as the same person as you did at the beginning of the lesson, but this time you'll be writing a letter to your family, explaining your decision to stay or leave North Carolina. You will read your letter to your classmates at the end of the unit. You may look through that's the first option. Second option is I have this book of Civil War hymns on the front table that you may have seen. It's pretty gaudy. You may look through it. You can find a Civil War hymn, and then if you identify a hymn that you like, you will write a 1-page description of the lyrics, but then you will play.
What's a Civil War hymn?
Civil War hymn is a song, just like, I don't know. You may have heard the word hymn if you are a frequenter of church, but it is a song, normally with lyrics. All of our Civil War hymns have lyrics, but you will write a 1-page description of the lyrics. You will play or sing the song for your classmates at the end of the unit. And if you find a song that you like, come find me and we'll listen to it together so you know you have the resources to know how to play it or sing it. And the third option is you will draw a significant event in the Civil War and write a 1-page explanation of the significance of your drawing. We'll be covering the Civil War over the next 4 weeks or so, and we'll know all of the significant events. So once you decide, if you feel like drawing something, you can decide a significant event, and I can help you decide an event if you feel a little bit indecisive. And then the fourth option, I'll leave a little bit open-ended. If you find something that you would like to present to your classmates that is relevant to the Civil War and kind of displays your knowledge, you can write a short proposal explaining what you would like to do and bring it to me, and I will help you accomplish that. I know that some of you like mechanics. Maybe you could make a model cotton gin if you feel that you're capable. Okay. Yes, Leslie.
Maybe my dad can help and do most of the work because he loves doing things like that.
Maybe not. We'll talk about it after class. Does anybody have any questions from today's lesson?
I like this lesson.
Me too.
I do. It's very sad that so many people killed each other.
I like history.
Everybody pack up your things. Desk cleared. You can put them in your backpacks, the worksheets I gave you today, and we will line up at the door to go to lunch. Single file as always. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Wood.
You're all my best friends.